Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, good evening, everyone. I pray that it has been a good week for you so far. If you're in a situation like us, we finally have the lights back on, so that's a good thing. So you may be wondering, okay, Troy, I think you may have missed a week, and yes, I was wondering the same thing. I'm trying to at least do a podcast every other week right now. Again, if we can get things lined out more, if we can build more support, then we'll get to doing it weekly. But I missed last week because we literally all last week we had no power. And while I do have a house generator that can run majority of the house, it's just some of those things that add to the headache. And I just don't think I'm going to be able to get a podcast out this week. So I apologize for those of you expecting some mode of normalcy from me. It hasn't happened in 2021 yet, but unfortunately, I know there's more people, even in our area, that are still struggling without power. It's been well over 7 days. Actually, we're going on day 9, I think, for a lot of people. So it's tough, when you have temperatures that get down in the single digits at night. Some of my neighbors just don't have the ability to handle that kind. So we try to be as neighborly as possible, do what we can do, and take care of the power guys that come through. try to be as nice to them as possible so they'll stay in the valley and get things done. So those of you that I know in the Midwest and in Texas, there's still some issues there. So praying for you all. Hope you guys have your power back on soon and things can get back to some sense of normalcy there. Well, tonight, I've got another great episode, a good discussion. We're actually trying something a little different. This is a follow-up interview. So it was December of last year, December of 19, not December of 20, December of 19, we had Jonathan Nixarian on from Roamin Acres. And it was his first time on the podcast. He gave us an overview of his farm, had a good discussion there. Well, I thought it'd be good to come back around a year later and talk to him about it. And Jonathan actually reached out to me. We got a conversation. I thought, this ought to be a good idea because I even went back and listened to our podcast, listened to the interview again, just to say, okay, here's what he was thinking. He was hoping he was going to do. Here was the plan. Did that happen? How did that go? So I thought maybe you guys would find this useful to see, you kind of get a snapshot of people individually when we do this interview, where they are right at this moment and maybe a little bit of their history. But when we talk about plans moving forward, those type of things, I thought it'd be neat to come back and say, okay, actually, how did that unfold? So if you want to do something really exciting, go back and listen to Jonathan's podcast first. The first one, like I said, I think it was December the 11th is when it aired. In fact, if I had my stuff together, I would tell you exactly what date that was. And that was actually, I do have it right here. That was episode 29, and it aired December the 11th, 2019. So you can go back and listen to that if you want to put this on pause. Or if you want to, kind of do a flashback, you can continue listening to this podcast, then go back and listen to episode 29 and just see how things followed out. Well, before we get into the interview, I just wanted to talk real quickly about the Patreon that we launched a couple weeks ago. I believe I announced it on the last podcast episode we did, and we already have some support coming in already. Man, I appreciate that. I want to give a shout out to those two individuals first and foremost for kind of sticking the neck out. I mean, it's one of those things where I get it. We all have our hard-earned money. We have money and time, and that's about all we have to serve. So it's a little tough to part with that at times. But I appreciate those that have come along already to say, hey, no, we want to partner with you. We want to see the podcast and the other elements of that grow, and we want to throw in some support there. So I want to say thanks to Donna Probert and Jed Bicker for coming on and taking that chance with me and being the first couple to jump in and support. I really, really appreciate it. And man, we've already had some great conversation. And that's really what I want to look at this as, is a collaborative effort. That I realize that if I just try to manage this whole thing by myself, and of course, run my farm, do the other things I'm doing, still spend time with my family, manage my day business. There's only so much time, and I see that I would almost do it a disservice if I just tried to keep all that to myself. So, getting the input, getting the support from you all. I like to see this as a collaborative effort. Dana and Jed both have already given me some great input, some great suggestions, and man, I like that. I like the idea of you all having some skin in the game. That way, it almost feels like your input's more potent, if that makes any sense. And maybe I'm being a little too transparent. It's not all about the money; it's about the buy-in. Yeah, I don't know if that registers or not. That when you decide to part with some of your hard-earned cash to put an effort into something, then it shows me that you're taking it serious. I want to take it more serious. I want to support your efforts of supporting me. So I want to step up and do the things that we agreed we're going to do, and make sure that we can follow through on that. So I'm not going to beat this horse anymore, but if you want to check it out, there'll be links down in the show notes where you can go to our Patreon page. We got a basic tier for $5. Like I said, we're doing a little differently, where if we hit the first 20 supporters at any dollar amount, then we'll pull the trigger on specific things and just keep going from there. And that's where input would be great for people to say, hey, Troy, why don't you offer this? If it's something I'm able to do, man, I'll definitely do it. It's just one of those things I'm still trying to wrap my brain around what you guys would find valuable from this perspective. So check that out. Please consider supporting if you would, and we'll keep on plugging along. Well, without further ado, I'm going to jump into our conversation with Jonathan, and I'll catch you guys on the tail end. So what we have is we have Jonathan Nixarian from Roamin Acres in Aiken, South Carolina. So first, I'm going to say welcome, Jonathan, and not let you have to hang out there in the wind. So welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. So when we last, it's like I feel like I'm doing like the old film noir radio station shows. So in our last episode, we talked to Jonathan. This is what was happening. He was on a precipice. No. So when we last talked to Jonathan, it was actually the recording date pretty much almost lines up exactly. In fact, I think I have in my notes, Jonathan, that we released the episode on the 11th of December, but I think we actually recorded back in October. I have to go back and check that. But anyway, so well over a year has passed. And if you want to go back and listen to that episode, it's episode 29. I'll put a link down in our show notes. And that was an episode where we introduced Jonathan. Jonathan and his family were new to Pastured Pigs. It was one of those episodes where we're talking to people that are just getting started. So we had some good discussion as to goals, plans, challenges he had already faced in that situation. So now a full calendar year has passed. And then there's all kinds of things that I'm sure have unfolded in that last year. So before I start squeezing all these questions out of Jonathan, let me say, Jonathan, so bring us up to speed. Anything changed massively? You are still in pig farming, right? You haven't decided to quit and go sell Amway products or anything?
Thought about it, as I'm sure many have. No, when we last spoke, we had two boars and, two gilts and a boar. And now we're up to 8 pigs total. We have 4 sows, 3 gilts, and a boar.
Okay, that's a pretty big move then.
A full wiener.
So did all of that stock come out of your spring farrowing that we were talking about last year, or did you go out and acquire more Berks?
So one we kept. And then we acquired 2 others, and then 2 that a gentleman we sold a boar to, unfortunately had to get out of pigs. He was doing, running a polyculture and he got a permaculture, and one part of his business took off, and he's like, I need to step out of pigs. And so we bought his stock from him, which was at the time with 2 barrows, the boar we had sold him, and 2 gilt and a sow. So we kind of took all that on board, and that kind of really jump-started our expansion.
Yeah, wow, okay. So, so again, to do the cliff notes, so you don't have to, if you're not going to go back, or obviously you haven't listened to episode 29 and you don't remember, just the cliff notes is Jonathan and his family are in Aiken, South Carolina, on 21 acres. Currently using about 3.5 of that for pigs, I believe. And they chose the Berkshire breed is what they were focusing on. They had a boar and 2 gilts when we talked to them. And at that point, we were actually, I believe when we were talking, Jonathan, you were wondering if maybe even one of your gilts had settled yet, because it was just getting to the point where the boar was starting to step up to the plate and do his job there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
He was February. He was born in February of last year.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was coming up on that age.
Okay. So did those 2? I assume then at least one of those gilts settled for the fact that you have that many pigs.
Yeah. So both settled. They actually gave birth 6 days apart.
All right.
We had the second one gave birth Thursday, March 12th, into Friday the 13th that morning. We had 1 litter of 12 and 1 litter of 10.
Okay.
That was right when the COVID pandemic hit. And if we would have had 100 piglets, we wouldn't have been able to move them.
Right.
We wouldn't have been able to they were flying off the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
So my wife and I chose to keep 1. And then, like I said, I sold some registered, some as just feeders, some as registered. Sold 2 registered boars, 1 to a friend up in Maryland, and then 1 to a gentleman in North Carolina, and he ended up having to get out. So he had a sow, 1 of her gilts, and 2 barrows, and we took those on. And then a gentleman about 2 hours north of me had bought a bred gilt from Flying K Berkshires, and he had a gilt, and so I picked that up. And then I got another one up from Kentucky, just all up and down the East Coast.
Yeah.
I'm finding that registered more of the meat line. I think I've kind of tapped the local area out for separate lines, but I think we're at a place too where we're just kind of going to grow our own, keep it in house.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So good. So let's back up and talk about those first farrowings. So you said 2 litters, 12 and 10. So were all those viable? Was that 100% to weaning, or did you have any issues there?
So the first litter we had 1 stillbirth. The remaining 9 made it to weaning. The second litter of 12, 2 didn't make it through the first night. 1 got crushed. I think 1 wandered off. I'm not positive. I didn't stay outside all night. And then another 1 got, I found it half consumed. I don't know what did it. But so we ended up, I think everything said and done with 19.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And those are first time gilts. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah. So how did the gilts do? How were their mothering instincts? Were those I assume, are those 2 gilts still as sows now? Are they still on the farm and ready to produce, or did you move on with them?
No, we kept them. They were great. One of them, a puppy dog came. If a pig squealed, she'd run over, but that was it. Not a sign of aggression. More when I say run over, just kind of see what's going on, then wander off. Her sister, a little more parental, and wouldn't stop until the squealing stopped, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But both were great. They both settled again, and we had 1 litter September, and we had 2 litters in September from them. Unfortunately, one of the hurricanes that went through dumped 6.5 inches at the same time, and we unfortunately lost that whole litter.
Oh wow.
Well, we had a litter of dogs born and a litter of pigs born at the same time.
Yeah.
And so only 1 person, and so I wasn't in both places. And the 2 of them I was able to pull. They were cold, brought them inside, warmed them up, gave them some goat's milk, and we donated them to the local FFA.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the kids at the local high school support some kids that do it for a 4-H project.
So was that a flooding issue or was that an exposure issue?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Where she picked, it pooled up in about 6.5 inches of water.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So I actually didn't find how many she had for 2 or 3 days later until the water receded. On one hand, I was really bummed. I mean, I say bummed because it's time plus drama kind of thing. But she had the litter at 16, which is really good numbers for a Burke. Downside is, unfortunately, only 2 survived.
Right.
And we knew she was due. We just didn't expect her. I had her pegged for another 2 days. So it was just bad luck, bad planning on my part.
Well, that's, I mean, obviously 6.5 inches of rain all at once is a little tough to manage, especially in flat ground where you don't have a high ground necessarily to go to very easily without having to change your whole operation. So yeah, that's understandable. There's a lot of issues like that pop up. Okay, so wow, sounds like there's a lot there to unpack. So the success with those 2 gelts, now sows, throwing a litter of 16 second time around, that's definitely makes her a keeper. Of course, you don't necessarily know how many of those were viable, but it sounds like most of them were. So it sounds like she's definitely a keeper. But you talked about when we talked last year, you talked about your farrowing setup, that you were thinking about a smaller pen area there. Did you end up cordoning them off? How did you manage shelter, or did you just let them farrow open pasture since you're so far south?
I made like a 4x3 like lean-to, walled in on 3 sides. Her sister, who gave birth very end of September into October, we had actually put in there. At the time, it wasn't backed by hard fence, and she decided to go into the neighbor's 200 acres to farrow.
Oh yeah.
And she had 15.
Wow.
Of which 12 made it.
Okay.
And we moved them with the help of some marshmallows, moved her and them back after they were about a week old.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've discovered that as well, that when I want 2 sows to be in the farrowing barn, because that seems convenient for me, it has to be hard wall, because if they decide, hey, this is too close for me to have my litter beside so-and-so, I'm out of here. And I've seen them go right through fence, electric, non-electric. If they can get through it, they can get through it.
Yeah, so I actually, after I moved them in, I finished, because only 3 of the walls on that were, or 3 of the sides were hard fence. Now it's fully hard fence.
Yeah, good deal. All right, well, that's good that she didn't go too far and everything turned out well there. So that sounds like, both of those are good litters from those Burkes. So they've definitely proven themselves. Sounds like your boar and your 2 sows now are proven and should be getting some good future litters out of that. So you've brought in some additional genetics. So what was other than convenience and, like you said, trying to isolate some meat lines, what was the motivation to bring in more at that point?
So I kind of wanted to start a lot bigger than we did. There's definitely the demand around here, but it was kind of availability and finding what we wanted. As far as the other 2, it wasn't planned. It was one of those opportunities arose kind of thing. At the time, we had 2 open butcher slots, and we're short 2 pigs. So the 2 barrows that were also thrown into the mix, instantly, I was instantly able to find customers for. And so I only had them on farm for a month.
Yeah.
Before they went right out the door. So it was a good turnaround from my point of view there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as, a year and a half old or a 2-year-old sow, that's, after, quarantine period, making sure, she's not bringing any sickness, that's almost instant, I don't have to wait the year plus to grow her out.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the thought process there. The farm that they had gotten those pigs from originally was a farm I was talking to. It's just they're up more your ways up in they're actually in Virginia, not West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just a long drive. So it's kind of a this is a decent deal. I can give it a shot.
Yeah. All right. So remind me again. Do you say you have 2 boars now, or you have 3 boars now on farm?
We have 1 boar.
Oh, 1. Okay.
We're looking into getting another one, but that's not been decided yet.
Okay. So you got the 1 boar that you have right now. So are you setting up a breeding schedule? Or are you kind of letting him kind of hang out with everybody and he decides when breeds, or do you have a process in place?
Right now, they're all kind of in the same pen. The plan is to have it so that we can move them to him or vice versa. I'd like to. We're actually in the process. The materials are on the farm to set up a second pen, about 2.5 acres on the other side of the property. Hoping the distance helps with that. That way, we don't encourage jumping through fences.
Right. Yeah.
Because obviously, we had a litter last week. Not the ideal time to have a litter. Not a big market for weaners right now.
Mm.
So.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm sure even down south where you are, that there's not as much of a market right now. So you said something earlier that made me raise an eyebrow, because it's interesting, and I love the fact that we're kind of doing this checkup again, because when we talked last time, and for those of you listening, I did go back and listen to the podcast again, so I made sure I was at least asking the right questions about the right farm and didn't confuse them. But last time, Jonathan had said to me that he wasn't sure about his market. He was going to be selective. He's going to be careful going forward. Kind of just stick his toe in the water with these 2 gilts. And you weren't sure about a market there, Jonathan, but it sounds like that the market has indeed opened up. Do you think that is natural, or is that all COVID related? And maybe when COVID goes away, there will be maybe a pullback. What's your assessment so far?
As far as like for weaned pigs to grow out your own, I think a lot of that is COVID. I don't know how much of that'll stay around. I know one guy bought 6 weaners from me. And just in discussion, he also ordered, I think, 100 Cornish cross the same week, and all the toilet paper shortage kind of switched in his head that this dependence on commercial ag maybe is in the grocery supply chain maybe isn't the best path forward for him and his family. I think some of those people will stick around. I think you'll get people that might do it a season, maybe 2, and then back out. And that's kind of been the catalyst for us to not be, let's get 20 new gilts. And, it's a lot of mouths to feed.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this is for all of us, and me included. I think looking at any uptick we had this year, we have to weigh that carefully, simply because with COVID, it could be a result of, like you said, the people feeling there's an immediate need to do something, and this knee-jerk reaction to respond to a global crisis. So if things go back to normal, unfortunately, a lot of people have shortened memories. So when things go back to whatever normal looks like, if and when that happens, we may see a return, that slide coming down, or we may even see an overstock of animals simply because other people have not planned accordingly to see that demand drop.
Absolutely.
So, wow, there's so many other questions I want to ask. So, infrastructure, the last year, what infrastructure improvements have you made when it comes to, because I think you expanded, right? You said you're on 3.5 acres now of your 21, but I believe you weren't on that much last year, correct?
No, originally we were probably only in a 50 by 50 area, which we then expanded around the where we had the chicken coop. Since then, that's been torn down, and we expanded throughout our woods. And that was, again, my wife's a school teacher, so she was home during all that. And so I had, an able body that could help. And so a lot of that was, with everyone home, it was so much easier to get things done in a much faster time period. So we got that all done, I think, back in March.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a big. I mean, my goodness, that's such an accomplishment, and you feel like you're getting a better handle on your operation when you have that expanded opportunity. You put some of that infrastructure in that makes handling and maneuvering a little easier. And in our discussion last year, you talked about even issues with your all's dogs, maybe tearing the fence down, doing some of these things, and you were polyculture at the time, so you had cattle and other things that were kind of just really running you ragged. And it seems like with experience, you put the infrastructure in place that keeps those from being issues, I assume.
Yeah, and we upgraded our fence charger, our energizer, and there's been a couple the learning curve was steep with escape yeast for a little bit, and then we had the blue barrels for waters, the IBC totes. They're a lot harder to tip over for big old sour gilt, so makes it a lot easier to manage.
Yeah. Any other infrastructure improvements you've made other than your fence and your waters?
I think so. We had it when we did expand the area. We put a gate, another gate in, which is just easier to approach. Wasn't really thinking, ahead when I placed it as far as other trees or obstructions from backing up to it. I think that's the big one.
Yeah. All those little improvements, man, they definitely help, and especially when you figure out a plan and say, okay, I think this is going to work. You execute, and then you see the fruits of that labor, the fact that they're able to stay in a spot or be able to move from point A to point B. Well, so what assessments? Looking back, kind of like the year in review here. So you look back and say, this year proved to be extra challenging because of X. So what challenges did you find to be there simply because of just because of your expanded operation or COVID related? But what challenges did you run into that you weren't expecting?
So I say it tongue in cheek. We had our first. We've loaded pigs twice now, just for different butchering dates. The second time was so much smoother. But the first time, I thought, if I rigged some hog panels, and latched in place, I didn't think, they can see through it. They're going to try and get through it.
Yeah.
And so it literally ended up wrestling a pig, 20 yards to a trailer. And they're bigger, they're a lot lower to the ground than we are.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I also learned, shut the electric fence off before you do that. A little trick they don't write down in the book in the instructional guides there.
Right. Exactly. And that's funny. I think what you said is key. And for those listening that are just getting started or maybe thinking about sticking their toe in the water, that you can see, you can hear, you can even watch on YouTube people that have this setup where they back a livestock trailer up to the edge of the pasture fence for a couple days. They're feeding their pigs in the trailer. The pigs walk up in there, and it's a cakewalk. And you're like, well, that's easy. Why are all these people whining and complaining about being able to load pigs easily? And that may work out. You may work out a majority of the time, but there's always going to be that time where that doesn't work. And without hard fence, without corrals, without choke down points, those type of things, I think you're setting yourself up for a kick in the face sometimes, simply because usually when you're loading your pigs, you're on a time schedule. You got to get your pigs to processor to keep from missing a date. And man, I had to learn that the hard way. I did the exact same thing you said. Hey, some woven wire, some this and that, and feed buckets, they should go right up in there. That didn't work out. So yeah, you have to learn how to put that infrastructure in, and even if you think it's simple, or if it's proven to be simple the first time, then just expect things to be different the next time.
Oh, absolutely. The first time we had just gotten the trailer serviceable, maybe 2 days prior, so we'd never fed in it before or anything like that. The partitions weren't up in the 2.5 or almost 3 acres, so our boar was on the trailer and not letting anyone else in.
Right.
So so stuff like the second time, they were back in that little 50 by 50 square, and they'd been fed for 2 or 3 days on the trailer, and then held feed for a day. And I think start to finish, it was 5 minutes.
Right.
The second time, but that first time was probably close to 5 hours for 2 pigs. So it was a lot of memories there.
Right, definitely, yeah, and I think in my situation, I borrow a livestock trailer, so it's tough for me to say, okay, 4 or 5 days in advance, I'm gonna park a livestock trailer here and let them eat, come in and out and all that type of thing. Usually not an opportunity. So being able to figure out exactly how that operation is going to work, and again for those listening, don't do like I did when you get pigs. You think, okay, I'm going to put pigs on pasture, figuring out how to load them up. That's 6-8 months down the road. I'll jump off that bridge when I get to it, and then before you know it, you're scrambling to come up with some sort of infrastructure there. All right.
Yeah.
So we talked about challenges. Is there anything that you really felt was, hey, this was a goal, this was something I really wanted to try to do, and man, I think we had great success here. What's one of the home runs maybe y'all hit this year?
Butchery, lining up processing days. I think, some of it's probably listening to the podcast and really staying in tune with the, 15 or 20 different pig groups on Facebook. Back in March, when this all started happening, I reached out and scheduled butcher days.
Yeah.
As soon as I could.
Yeah.
And we had really, really good. We used 2 different butchers. One's a custom, one was a USDA butcher. Really good experience with both of them. Everyone's been really pleased with all their cuts, which that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Please. Got a lot of pictures of people. Hey, we had ham on Thanksgiving because we had one, So that was really fun. And just for me personally, I think the first farrowing we came home and farrowing. And so my 15-year-old son, not the farmer, he's not going to take it over when I move on. I can tell you that. He stayed out there the whole time, completely invested, asking a lot of questions. When we had the stillborn, he took it pretty rough, but he asked a lot of really good questions. He wanted to go bury it. And that's one of the things I really value about this is getting the kids outside. Because it's really easy to fall into sitting in front of the TV, watch a movie, or play video games, and getting them involved outside. So that's been the big thing I think for us is we're doing things as a family outside together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's that investment that isn't directly tangible, but is going to pay dividends in the long run, definitely.
Yeah.
So looking at some other things here, what about the takeaways from 2020, as weird as it was, what do you see in 2021? What is the goal? What's the next step for Roamin Acres? What's on the short list and what's on the long list?
The short list is we're trying to get our social media marketing going, and all the analytics, because you can have 100 pigs if you don't have 100 customers or some variable that equals 100. It's not good at the end of the day.
Right.
And so we're working on kind of that. We have a domain. We've never done anything with it, so people are looking for the product. But if you don't pop on a search or a query, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're really trying to push that side of it. And then a local restaurant recently opened up. They're looking for local farm to table stuff, and so trying to engage with them. And they do the call to action, and then you wait.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of that, and then we've really tried to make connections with the local FFAs at the high schools. Get connected with them. I think that's A, good for the kids, B, good for us if recognition. People see this is where you can get pigs, and then just slowly build that customer base. Word of mouth is probably the best way I found. Half of our customers have come from that way. Some of it was neighbors are friends, and then their neighbors and friends, and so just keep taking care of those that are taking care of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. So what's on the long-term list then?
I want to buy the 60 acres that's behind us.
There you go.
And I like this. I would love to do this full time, but that's a matter of scale, and we're not. I don't think unless you get really lucky, you don't necessarily fall into that. And so it's a slow building process.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I think it's great to have those long-term goals. And my goodness, if property acquisition fits into your model financially and keeps you from being way over leveraged, then that's never a mistake. Usually, again, unless you're keeping yourself from being able to do other things, but you can do so much with property when it comes to this effort or even another effort. And my goodness, right now property values just seem to keep going up and up. So man, if you can factor that in, and that would 3 times the size of your existing property right now. So that could be a game changer for you all.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it's wanting to do it and having the availability to do it are kind of not lined up right now.
Yeah, no, that is. That's just something you keep your eye on. That's for sure. Yeah, because the land will always be there. It's motivating the people one way or the other to sell it is always the issue.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do have to ask you one more question too, because I kind of chuckled about this when I listened to our podcast earlier this week from last year. So it sounded like, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth here, or at least try not to, but it sounded like that maybe last year your wife was a little apprehensive about pigs coming on farm. There were comments made about when the pigs were on the back porch, that was kind of a mark against you. When the pigs were at the neighbors, that was a mark against you. When you were getting on the tractor chasing pigs down the street, that was a kind of a mark against you. And you said that, I think I'll be able to convince her when she tastes bacon, when she gets that sausage, when she has that first pork chop. So how did that work out for you?
So she's on board. She's actually been the one pushing to get a second boar.
Yeah.
So we can have unrelated piglets at the same time.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was piglet. Never underestimate the power of a child or a baby animal.
Right. Exactly.
Not to push any stereotypes or anything, but she absolutely loves the piglet. And then when you're able to hand feed a piglet from 2 or 3 weeks old, when they're 6 months old, they're really friendly.
Yeah.
We have one that'll flop over and let your belly rub it, and so that was a big push there. And the fact that we were positive and booked and didn't have 30 extra pigs running around that we didn't want also helped.
Right. Yeah.
So
good deal. So it sounds like she is on board, and even they're encouraging you to continue and to grow and to expand your operation. So that's great.
Yeah, and her parents now even go around bragging about it. At first, they were like, our kids got some pigs, and since then, they brag about it. Grandpa loves coming and helping move pigs, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You know what they say, but behind every successful farmer is a spouse with a day job and usually a nursing degree. So that's great, man. Awesome. That's good that's working out in that direction. Sounds like she is definitely on board. Yeah, I like what you're saying about the baby pigs. I think that's the glorious mystery of pigs, is this incredible transition from cute to tasty. And they really don't overlap too well. I mean, I guess maybe suckling pig is still pretty doggone good, but usually once they cease being cute, that's when they really become tasty. So it's a good transition.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we've covered a lot of my questions there, and we've talked about future plans. And of course, I usually always close out the podcast with asking you a question about what's your favorite thing about raising pigs on pasture. I don't know if you remember your answer, but has that changed? Have you found even new, interesting or exciting aspects of raising pigs on pasture?
I really think it's pretty much still the same. I like being out there with them. I like getting the family out there, especially, as the eldest gets into, we have an angsty teenager now. Getting him to willingly engage with anything the family is doing is a high call. So we were actually castrating over the weekend, and he's out there helping. And I think that maybe not the high point of dealing with pigs, but getting the family out there is awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And,
yeah, I can't say that that either of my teenage boys would have said, castration is the favorite time of year on the farm. I really like that time.
Yeah, definitely not. But at the same time, he comes out and he helps. And so that, like I said, that's really neat. From a dad, not to get corny and be dad, but getting the kids out there and helping out, and working together is really good.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, again, not to get down that sentimental train as well, but with teenage, both of my boys are teenagers now. One's in college, but still stays at home because of COVID. But this, you realize, okay, these times are short. If I want to spend time with them outside doing stuff that I love, and hopefully that they at least tolerate, to have some of that quality bonding time. You only have so much of that, and it's great to be able to do that when you can, and especially if it's a positive time. Sometimes I get them out there and I'm losing my mind because something's not going the way I want to. So it's like, I think I just guaranteed they're never going to have a farm once they leave. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, John, I have photos of my daughter over the summer. The pig made a wallow, and my daughter's rolling around in it with the pigs. I'm like, what are you doing? But, I got photos of it.
That's hilarious.
So it's just good time.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where no matter what your kids grow up to do, and this is for everybody listening that has kids or in that situation, no matter what they grow up to do, they're going to be in a very small minority to say, yeah, when I was at home, we did this with pigs. We raised our own meat. Most likely they're going to be in that minority unless they get a bunch of around other farm kids, but it's going to be a very unique experience for them, and hopefully it's a positive experience that helps them somewhere on down the road, whether they decide to farm or not.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming back on. It was a pleasure talking to you. I like this approach of kind of following up. I hope I wasn't grilling you too much to nail you down on things you said a year ago and how they came through. But I think it's kind of fun to look at that and say, the best laid plans. We all have them, and how do they work out? If fortunately you didn't come on and say it was a crash and burn and I'm now divorced and living, in a hotel down by the river.
One pig almost caused that while you joked.
Oh, no. Yeah. Those times can come along. Well, all right, man. Well, we'll definitely stay in contact with you, and you get a website up or details like that. I think for those listening, y'all check out Roamin Acres on Facebook because Jonathan is providing registered Berks. So that is just another source there in South Carolina to look at. So I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about that if you're looking for that specific breed and you wanted something that's documented. Well, Jonathan, I pray you have a great rest of the week, and this litter goes well. Fortunately, in South Carolina, you're not going to be dealing with extreme cold for a while, it sounds like, and may not even any at all. So hopefully that litter does well this winter and grows big, and you get them moved.
Here's the hoping on the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, you take care. Have a good day. Well, all right. Well, there's some good follow-up there. I hope you guys appreciated that and enjoyed that conversation. I did find that interesting. And I want to throw that opportunity out to some of y'all that have been on. I think we're episode 60 now is what this one actually is. So if I'm doing my math right, then there should be 59 other. Actually, I guess there were some where I was doing solo. But if you've been on the podcast before and you're listening to this and you think there's some value in coming back and doing a follow-up, reach out to me. And let's put some parameters here. So let's say it's at least been a year. And then we'll make that option number one. You've at least been a year since you've been on the podcast. We can have a full season there of update maybe. And, of course, we'll spread these out. We want to just keep coming back and doing back-to-back follow-ups because we've got some other great things lined up and some other topics to discuss. But I'd like to do this every once in a while to kind of dangle that carrot, that glimpse at some of those operations that were maybe at a really neat transition or had some big plans for the next year. Obviously, COVID it may have changed a lot of those things, so it may be a good idea to discuss those and just see how that affected your farm operation in the last year. So reach out to me. You can obviously just email me, troy@redtoolhouse.com, or just go to the website, Pastured Pig. Oh, there we go, letting it go. Website's not there yet. We have the domain, we have the location, we have the server set up. We don't have it live yet, but redtoolhouse.com, Pastured Pig Podcast. Use that form and you can communicate with me that way. Well, if you're listening to this and you'd like to be on the podcast, even if you hadn't been before, obviously I'm welcoming the opportunity to have more people on. I was actually doing an interview that will air in a couple months tonight before recording this. This is where all this time stuff freaks me out. I can't keep it all straight in my mind. But in that situation, this individual had a lot of great suggestions, a lot of great ideas. So feel free, if you want to be on the podcast and you're not sure that maybe you're a possible candidate. Little secret here, I've not told anyone no yet. Now, if you're a circus juggler or something like that, and you're not dealing with pastured pigs, then that would probably be my first no. But if you have anything to do with raising pigs on pasture in any scope of the matter, even if you feel that you're a noob or you've been doing it for 4,000 years, give me a shout. I'll have you on the podcast. I'm still just having a great time discussing these things with all kinds of people in different walks of life. The guy I talked to tonight, he's 20 years younger than me, so I felt like the old man here listening to a young man. I was kind of jealous, like, man, if I could be 20 years younger again. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to wrap up. So before I do, obviously, be sure to check out the Patreon. Again, can't stress that enough. I'm not going to get NPR on you and do a whole fundraising podcast episode or anything like that, but I will be throwing it out here as we go along just to try to see if we can get this going. But I'm anxious to reveal some of the other plans that we have, and I'd love to see those come to fruition if you guys are on board with me as well. Pray everyone has a great week out in the pasture. And if your power's off, I pray that you get it back on soon. And we had a almost 60-degree day today, so I'm getting spring fever already. Well, take care, everybody.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.